What's up, everybody? Paul here from the Hoops Crew. And after a little bit of delay, we've had a few sick kids and whatnot in the house over the course of this last week. It's time to revisit the, finals previews of a whole range of our Geelong Cats going into season 2024's finals. We have a game against Port in a matter of less than a week now at this particular stage. And I want to dissect a whole range of different players that are going to be contributing, hopefully big things for the Cats. But I'm going to continue things on. We covered danger in the last video. Today, we're going to focus on none other than the vice captain, Tom Stewart. Now, Tom has had a strange old year. He missed the cut for the All-Australian this year for probably the first time in, since his debut season. He's been that good for that long. And it did seem like he'd been kind of worked out a little bit by clubs for a portion of the season. And then the winds of change kind of kicked in yet again. What I want to do in a moment is look through Tom Stewart's numbers for this year, because I think that kind of paints the picture of what we can and what we should expect. My hope is that we get the Tom Stewart of old. My worry is that these teams continue to put time into him, and it really curbs his influence, and often by extension, the fortunes of the Cats take a hit as well. So let's jump into some of the numbers and see what we can see here. This is a snapshot of Tom Stewart's season 2024 so far. Let's scroll back up to the top where it all began. And what you could see at the beginning here were very familiar Tom Stewart-like numbers, rounds 1 to 6. He was, getting 20, mid-20s disposal-wise consistently per game. Everything was looking pretty good. He did, of course, get injured in the game there against Brisbane and missed the next week, the game against Carlton. And then, I guess, in sync with the fortunes of the Cats, that's where Tom Stewart's form took a bit of a nosedive. You can see those disposal figures dropping quite rapidly. Now, of course, he's a wonderfully classy player, and so he still had an influence. None of these you would say are bad games, but they are bad games on the Tom Stewart scale. And basically, he was getting tagged as a half-backer, and players were just sticking to him like glue, and it was making his ability to peel off and intercept in the ways that he's done so well for many, many years very, very hard. And so you can see the number of disposals dropped. You can see the number of marks started to drop a little bit too. A lot of the ways that we see, and some of these are immeasurables too, they're things that stats aren't going to necessarily show, but a lot of the things that we kind of expect from Tom Stewart, that we know that Tom Stewart can provide, are things that we kind of weren't seeing through this kind of 7 to 8 game period between round 8 and round 15. Tom Stewart was very, very well held as a half-backer. And so things needed to change. And so I think the club had held on for a little while. They were hoping that he'd be able to overcome, that they'd be able to maybe within the defensive unit structurally come up with a way to be able to support Tom, to allow him to play his game still. But it was identified that clearly wasn't working. And so a bit of work had gone in. And in the game against Essendon, something changed. Tom Stewart became a midfielder. Tom Stewart became a midfielder who would cruise into the backline when the need arose. And it made it very, very hard for the opponent, who might be a conventional midfielder, to stick to him in ways that they would normally, because midfielders so often go ball chasing, and then wouldn't be able to account for him properly when he would cruise back into the backline. We'd also then have a 7th defender when he decided to do so. Structurally, it posed a lot of problems for the opposition. And for Tom, it was clearly, it was quite visible, I think, in his body language too. There was a flick of the switch. There was a freedom that came with the change in circumstance for him. He looked visibly happier on the football field again. He looked like he had that lease of life back, that freedom that we know and love, and is so valuable to the Cats lineup. That returned from round 16 onwards. Now, if we then examine the rest of the season, there's one game that I want to look at pretty closely, and it is something that I guess I'm mindful of going into the final series. Ross Lyon, genius coach, betted us in the round 23 game against St Kilda. What I noticed in that particular game, and I'll admit the commentary teams kind of pointed it out as well, though I've not really heard much said about it since, was that Tom Stewart was tagged again as a midfielder this time. Liam Stocker basically followed him for the whole game, and Liam Stocker has the ability to hurt you going forward. He also has the ability to run with. He's an athletic guy. He can play the game. He's physical. He's got a lot of attributes that can kind of caused Tom Stewart some problems. He probably didn't have the take, and that's why Tom Stewart ultimately got away with 21 disposals. But there was a difference to Tom Stewart in that game. His influence was dulled a bit again. And it does leave me a little bit worried going into the final series that if a team decides to play a midfield tag on him, but is mindful about the selections they make, knowing that Tom Stewart's going to try and float into defense, someone who's going to actually be able to compete and play that defensive forward sort of role on him as well. And it is a very unique sort of player we're talking about here. Not every club has that sort of player that has some of the physical attributes that Liam Stocker has, whilst had the tank to be able to kind of run with him in the midfield to a degree. Not every team has this, but the teams that do could employ that against the Cats throughout this final series. I can think of on the Port Adelaide list. I can think of on the Bulldogs list. I can think about on a whole the Hawthorn list. I'm thinking about teams that we could potentially play in week 2 if we were to lose. I can think of players on each of those 3 lists who could play that same sort of role that Liam Stocker did. Maybe not as well, maybe better. But I can picture players on each of those lists who could perform that role and run with him in defense, but also through the midfield. And so it's going to give us something to think about a little bit going into the final series. If Tom Stewart's able to play in the midfield as he was throughout the majority of the back half of the season from round 16 to 24, then I think that bodes very, very well for him. And of course for the Cats as well, because he's been a wonderful midfielder. He's actually shown a lot of really impressive midfield qualities for a guy who's been playing intercept halfback for his entire AFL career. It seemed like the way he presented in that round 16 game against Essendon, and then for the series of games afterwards, he presented like a bloke who's been doing it for years, which just shows the great quality and the great class of the guy. But I am mindful that in the event that he finds himself kind of tagged through the midfield and then followed into defense when he goes there, that could be a bit of a problem. For the defensive unit more specifically, I guess he could then maybe avoid the area, and that, I guess strategically, I think, okay, well, if I'm going to get followed in there and my influence is going to be dulled a little bit, I'm probably not going to lose the contest to whoever it is that I'm playing against, but am I getting in the way? Am I creating problems here? Could I be more benefit breaking away, going the opposite end and have that more attacking focus? And maybe that's what Geelong needs to explore in the event that this happens. And we did kind of see it in that St Kilda game to a degree, because Liam Stocker doesn't have the tank necessary to run with Tom Stewart. Tom was able to get away on a few occasions. And so the numbers at face value don't look too bad, but his influence was certainly dulled. The West Coast game, of course, as is well documented, we can write that off. The Cats conservatively benched him in the second half, just as they did with Lawson Humphries, to protect him from potential injury. But I think going into the finals, we've got the right play for Tom Stewart at the moment. But I am mindful of the what ifs in the event that a Liam Stocker style player comes and tags him through the midfield and follows him into the defensive into the opposition forward line, because that could be a challenge for Tom to have to contend with. Anyway, that's where I'm at when it comes to Tom Stewart going into the final series. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you think about Geelong going into our Thursday night match against the Power. It's getting really close at this particular point, and I'm very keen to see how things shake up for us. Hopefully we can come away with a win. I'm going to tip it. Check out all the Hoops Crew content on the YouTube. Visit us on Patreon, where you can subscribe for a 7-day free access, full access period, where you can check out all the things we do, from exclusives to early access content, and then stick around for the cost of $5 for the entire month. You can continue to get all of those exclusives and early access opportunities delivered to your inbox. There's lots of cool stuff there, from my scratching post to previews, extended previews, other exclusives. There's awesome stuff there just for you. Go check it out. You can find me at Paul James Games on socials. And until next time, that's it for Tom Stewart for now. Stay tuned for more from our younger brigade, those who are playing their first finals this year. Thanks a lot for watching. Remain Geelong strong, and I'll see you later.